So we're going to, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping items here while we're just waiting for a few more people to join. So I just wanted to say hello and welcome everybody to our session today, presented in partnership with Ovarian Cancer Canada and Cancer Care Manitoba. My name is Stephanie Goslin, and I'm the Programs Director with Ovarian Cancer Canada. And I also wanted to introduce my colleague, Michelle Elwood, who is the Gynae Cancer Patient and Family Educator at Cancer Care Manitoba. She's on the call also, and Michelle's going to be live in the chat today. So if you had any comments or thoughts or feedbacks, Michelle is in the chat box there. I just wanted to say that we've been so thankful for this partnership. Michelle and I have had the pleasure of doing several in-person workshops in the past in Winnipeg, Brandon, and we're really happy after some hiatus because of COVID to be collaborating again this spring with our virtual Lunch and Learn series. So today is the first event in our spring Lunch and Learn series for women during and after gynecological cancer treatments. So before we get started, I do just have a couple of housekeeping items. So please note that for the duration of the session, everybody will be placed on mute, but we really encourage you to ask questions and share any thoughts that you have. If you have questions, we are going to save some time at the end to do a question and answer. There's a little Q&A box at the bottom. If you can just type your question in there, we'll get to those. And again, if you have any comments or feedback throughout the presentation, please feel free to type those into the chat session. We also will be recording today's session, and we will have that posted hopefully by the end of the week on the Ovarian Cancer Canada website. And so today our presentation, we have individuals from Saskatchewan and Manitoba and our speakers from Alberta, and we have over 30 people with us today. So we are going to get started. So I'm excited to introduce you to our session and our speakers for today, Living an Active Life with and Beyond Cancer. Julianna Dreger is a clinical exercise physiologist at the University of Calgary's Health and Wellness Lab. She is the research coordinator for Excel, Exercise for Cancer to Enhance Living Well. Manuel Ester, Manny, is a PhD candidate at the Health and Wellness Lab within the University of Calgary's Faculty of Kinesiology. He works as an exercise instructor and researcher with adults affected by cancer, seeking to integrate exercise into standard care within oncology. His research is focused on using technology to improve maintenance of exercise behavior change and ensuring that long-term health benefits are achieved. We also have with us today Sarah Chavez. Sarah was born in Peru and has been a Canadian citizen since 2006. She lives in Lacombe, which is in central Alberta. Sarah is a breast and ovarian cancer survivor who was diagnosed in 2012, and she's going to share some of her experiences with us today as well. So again, thank you all for taking the time to be with us, and we're going to get started. And Manny, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And for the great introduction, you'll have to excuse my voice as I'm still recovering from COVID last week. So my voice is mostly back, but it still sounds a little choppy here and there. So excuse me for that, but thank you everyone for being here. And as Stephanie said, we're going to be presenting today, but we really want this to be more of an informal discussion with all of you here. We appreciate you being here, and we really love to hear from you throughout the workshop today, the webinar. And please send us your questions, and we're going to have a couple of prompts throughout the slides as well to ask you to share in the chat if you feel comfortable doing so. And then Julianna is going to take over for the second half of this presentation today, and then we'll hear from Sarah at the very end. So thank you for being here, and I'll share my slides now. And I do have these slides as a handout, as a PDF, so if you're rushing to try to write something down, don't worry, we can get Stephanie to send these out to all the attendees as well after the fact. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about movement and physical activity, and why might you want to live an active life with and beyond ovarian cancer, and what might the benefits of that be. So just before we get going, here in Calgary, where Julianna and I live and work, I just want to acknowledge that we do live on and work within the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the Treaty 7 peoples in southern Alberta. This includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, which includes the Chiniki, the Bears Paw, and the Wesley First Nation. And I want to acknowledge that the city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. So with that, here's a little overview of what we're going to be going through today. And we like to structure this along the lines of a really easy to remember acronym here. So if you think this workshop, this webinar today, think active. So we're going to start with a couple of things around the value of movement. Why might you want to move? What are some of the benefits for you? So we're going to talk about all movement counts and why that's the case. We're going to talk about cancer and exercise and some of the benefits and guidelines around that, including some of the specific evidence we have for gynecological cancers and ovarian cancer. And then we're going to go a little bit more into the idea of behavior change and thinking about, now that hopefully in that first half we convinced you on why you might want to get moving or take a couple extra steps here and there. Then we're going to talk about how to move more, so how to make that idea a reality, how to build those habits and build active habits, and talk about some tips for behavior change. So with that, we want to practice what we preach with all the webinars we do. So if you feel comfortable in doing so, and if you're in a space to do so, we're just going to do a little bit of very simple movement and show you what movement looks like and try to emphasize that point that all movement counts. So if you're comfortable and with me today, I'm going to invite you to stand up and just join me for some gentle movement. We're just going to stand up here, take a couple deep breaths. We're going to start just with some gentle rolls of the shoulders. So especially when we're sitting hunched over and looking at our screens, we tend to hunch forward a little bit. So we want to do some movement just to open up those shoulders. And then from there, we're going to take it into some nice simple arm circles. So whatever your mobility allows you, if it's one arm or two arm, I'm going to invite you to join me in doing some big open arm circles. One arm, two arm, just feeling the value of that movement, that mobility we have through our shoulders, through our arms. And then just like that, we are going to finish with a couple of what we call sit to stands or squats, or however you want to see them. So if you've got your chair or your couch or something handy, I'm going to get you to just do a couple ups and downs off that chair or that couch. So you're going to see me just moving up and down, just a couple here. And then we can sit back down and shake out and feel really awesome about ourselves for doing a little bit of movement to start this presentation off today. And all of you just realize the value of movement and realize that you can move regardless of if you join me for the whole thing or parts of that. And I think that's awesome. So kudos to you. And with that, I want to lead into the idea that all movement counts. This is really very important to think about, especially when we're going through maybe a new cancer diagnosis or treatment, or a number of different long-term effects even after treatment for different cancers. It's really important to think about the fact that every step is a step in the right direction. So if you haven't done a lot of movement lately, don't feel bad about that. Don't be guilty for thinking, oh, I haven't done as much as I did before my treatment or something like that. Starting that momentum and starting those healthy habits and patterns is really what it's all about. So we encourage you to think about this. Some movement is always better than none. So even if you've just done a short walk around the block today, that is awesome, and that is all movement. And then we encourage you to think about moving more in daily activities. So as you're going through life and doing different things, we encourage you to think about some little things. How can you take a couple of extra steps here and there? Because all of that at the end of the day then adds up to a really meaningful amount of movement for the day. And with that, more movement does tend to lead to more benefits. So we want you to think about a gradual increase in starting low, starting simple, starting with something that's feasible for you right now, and then slowly progressing as you build some energy, some confidence, some new movement, and setting some movement goals. So I like this quote here and the associated image with it to hopefully stick into your head, but it says big journeys begin with small steps. So starting with those couple of steps, and that's what all movement counts is all about. So with that, let's talk a little bit about cancer and exercise. We had some excellent questions sent to us ahead of this webinar already. And I know there's lots of concerns and questions around what is feasible, what is safe, what is effective in terms of what can I do to exercise if I'm going through treatment or if I'm after treatment, but after this change in my life with the cancer diagnosis. So with that, I really want to emphasize the fact that from tons and tons of studies that have been done all over the world with individuals living with and beyond cancer, we know that exercise is both safe and beneficial for all those living with cancer. And this includes people across the entire cancer continuum. So anyone from pre-treatment into treatment, post-treatment, and then into either advanced cancer care, survivorship, or any number of stages after that, we know that there's exercise benefits across all of those stages. So some of the evidence that we know about from the research is summarized here. And we really want to highlight some of the key physical and psychosocial benefits of moving more for those individuals living with and beyond cancer. So this is a great article, and if anyone wants to look it up, it's available. It's a research article by Kristen Campbell, who's from BC. And she did some work summarizing a bunch of different research studies showing that there's really strong evidence, especially for things like anxiety and depression and fatigue on the psychological side. And then on the physical side, things like physical function, lymphedema, and then also things like bone health and sleep, that we know there's really strong evidence for exercise and how it can help with those factors. And I think maybe most importantly, we know that exercise is important for quality of life. So after a cancer diagnosis, after treatment, or whatever stage you might be in, even during treatment, exercise can help improve your quality of life. So one of the key or one of the most common side effects, whether it's short or long term, that people talk about in response to their cancer is cancer-related fatigue, which can then long-term lead to chronic cancer-related fatigue. We know that about 94% of individuals report cancer-related fatigue, but only 5% report that they've had anything done to treat that. So we think this is a really important gap, and this is something that you might be interested in and something that you might have experienced, this vicious cycle of fatigue on the right here. So we know that when we get tired, it tends to prevent us from really being active and moving as much as we'd like. So that leads to sedentary behavior, so sitting more and less movement, which then leads to deconditioning, so feeling of decreased fitness, decreased ability, some muscle loss, other things associated with that. So this can be a really negative cycle, and it's hard to break out of that cycle. But as we said previously, all movement counts. So as soon as you start moving and taking some steps here and there, being active, even if it's just little things, we know that there's a huge boost in energy from that movement. Your fatigue can be decreased, and this can really help you break that vicious cycle and move that into a positive cycle of energy and increased activity, as we hope that you'll be able to do. So there's really strong evidence around fatigue, the fact that cardiovascular training, resistance training, so strength training, as well as combined exercise, can reduce fatigue. And there's actually some great studies that show, even compared to the best pharmaceutical interventions, so best different pills and other interventions that are available to treat fatigue, exercise actually wins out and tends to be the best way to combat fatigue. So I also want to talk today about some of the benefits and research that's been done specifically in ovarian cancer. For each of these different tumors, there's been studies that have been done with specifically focusing on those patients and the value of exercise. So this is based on a recent review that came out in 2020. So a review really takes a ton of different studies that have been done on exercise and ovarian cancer, and it summarizes them in a nice little digestible package. So in terms of observational studies, and these are studies where they ask people over time, how active have you been? What are you doing to be active? And then ask them how they're doing and other factors. Higher activity after a cancer diagnosis, an ovarian cancer diagnosis, was associated with improved quality of life, reduced anxiety and depression. So really great emphasis on some of those psychosocial factors and quality of life. And we know that with exercise interventions, so these were specifically studies that offered some sort of exercise program to individuals, and then measured those improvements before and after the program. They saw improvements in quality of life, fatigue, also chemotherapy completion, so around that treatment piece, and physical function. So really great to see some of those benefits summarized. And this is really specific to ovarian cancer. We know that no cancer is the same, and different tumor groups might be going through different treatments in different situations. So I think it's important to highlight that for ovarian cancer, there's been a lot of research done and a lot of great work to show some of these benefits. So with all of this evidence that's been accumulated, there have been cancer and exercise guidelines published. So these essentially outline, like you may know, there's a 24-hour movement guidelines for adults in Canada that are more broad towards all adults. There's essentially exercise guidelines that highlight some key evidence and some key ideas and statements around what could people be doing with exercise if they have been diagnosed with cancer and are going through the cancer experience at any stage. So they want to highlight that exercise is safe and feasible during treatment. And this is important because sometimes during treatment, we might be a little bit worried about that, or we might be told to rest and really not stress the body too much. But we know that exercise is safe and feasible, and it does improve physical functioning, quality of life, and so forth. Then after treatment, this statement highlights the fact that exercise is essential for recovery and regaining fitness. So it can help improve some of those physical and psychological side effects. And there's growing evidence that quality of life and overall well-being is improved. And we know also that individualizing and tailoring are necessary. So I had a great question coming around this, and I really want to emphasize the fact that no two people here are going to be the same. So for each person, we need to consider maybe what were their exercise habits prior to their cancer, what kind of treatment or things have they gone through, and what are some of the other factors. So what's their age? What are some of the other things they might be going through? Do they have social support to help them support those healthy habits, and what access do they have? So individualizing and tailoring are essential. And these are the recommendations for how much exercise is a good level to aim for. Now, as I said, every step towards this counts. So if you're reading these numbers here and you feel like you're miles away from that, please don't worry at all. Just start taking those steps, and you can definitely get benefits from exercise without meeting all of these different levels. So a goal might be to work towards these, but it might be slow steps, and everyone's going to come from a different space. So in terms of aerobic training, which is things like maybe jogging, walking, biking, the recommendations are to accumulate up to 90 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise per week. So 90 minutes in different increments that you might use. So this wouldn't be 9 minutes at once, but over the course of a week. And then they recommend 2 days of strength training. So different exercises, whether it's body weight or resistance bands or weights, to help improve strength, and then flexibility training on most days of the week. So with that, here's a summary around what we talked about in this first portion around why move and trying to answer that question. So some of the things we talked about, we said, exercise can be a great way to take control and improve your health. So wherever you might be in your cancer experience, exercise can help you to increase your energy. It can reduce negative symptoms that you're experiencing. And importantly, it can help you regain some normalcy. So while normal might look different before and after a cancer diagnosis, we always get people that emphasize this in their testimonials after our programs that say, this exercise program helped me get back to a healthy, a good normal where I can be confident in my movement, feel good about myself, and do the things that I want to do. And importantly, it can lead to that higher quality of life. So regardless of what you're looking to do with your life, you can increase your quality and be able to do things that you want to do with incorporating exercise into your day-to-day. And we also really emphasize that every step counts. So while more movement might be associated with more benefits, and we have these guidelines, which might be pretty lofty standards to aim for, try to build up that gradual increase in physical activity. So with that, I'm going to take a deep breath, take on some water, encourage you to take a deep breath too and think about what we just talked about. And then we'll dig into the second question of today, which is how to move more. And here we're going to get you a little bit engaged as well. I'm going to have a couple of prompts for you to answer or to add in the chat if you'd like to. And this really hopefully gets a little supportive conversation going with all the different participants that are here today. So we're going to talk about what do those initial steps look like and what might those tips be that help you take those initial steps to being active. Then we talk about the importance of viewing movement as a lifestyle. So viewing yourself as a mover, as an exerciser, someone who is capable of doing movement. And then Julianna is going to take us into the Excel program and other resources that are available to support you to move more. And then Sarah is also going to share from her experience on Excel. So with the initial steps to being active, we want to talk about a couple of different things. And the first of these is self-regulatory skills. So essentially a lot of this, the onus for these pieces is going to be on you at the end of the day. And you've already taken a really important step in coming here today and registering, in taking the time out of your day to think about movement. So you've already started that process of thinking about movement. Now with this self-regulation, we want you to start by starting small. So as I said, every step counts. Start small. Think about something that you can do next week to be a little bit more active than this week. And then it's important to get those things on paper. So whether it's on a real paper or on a digital version, you're typing things out somewhere, you're sharing it with friends or family. Making plans and setting goals for yourself is a valuable way to stay accountable, to stay motivated, and also to then reevaluate and see how things are going and keep moving forward. After that, we encourage you to be consistent. So with those plans and goals, you have a really good basis to set up. If you share those plans with other people that are around you that might be able to support you, that's even better. And then think about some of the successes that you go through as well over time. Don't just always think about the next plan, the next goal, and always look forward. Sometimes it's valuable to visualize, to think back and reward yourself for successes, reward yourself for those steps you've taken, and also acknowledge the progress that you've made. With that, we need to trust the process and allow for setbacks. So once we've made our plans and goals, and once we're moving on a day-to-day basis and working towards moving more in daily life, there's going to be some ups and downs. So you might have another week of treatment coming up, or you might have a week where you're off on vacation or something else comes up. So allowing for those setbacks and being gracious towards yourself for those things in life that get in the way of movement is totally okay. We don't want you to feel guilty about that. We want you to then go back to your plans and goals and think about, okay, this week was a little bit more challenging, but I trust the process. I trust what I have in place. And lastly, maybe most importantly, we want you to enjoy your movement. So movement and what movement is enjoyable and feasible is going to look different for everyone. But if you make your exercise, your movement fun, if you make it approachable and something that you enjoy doing, whether it's in a social group or whether it's getting out on a nature walk or those pieces, that's ultimately going to be really easy to make that decision if what you're doing is something that's enjoyable to you. So here are some of the keys to behavior change that we know from the psychological research around exercise and behavior change. And there's 3 pillars here really. So you'll see those self-regulatory skills we talked about are in the middle of this triangle for a physically active lifestyle. But there's 3 things. So the first is around self-confidence. So this is, do you feel confident to move more day to day? And building that self-confidence happens by taking those steps slowly, surely, making plans, having people around you to support you, all helps to improve that self-confidence, that belief that yes, I am a mover, I can move, and I can do things, whether it's a crazy exercise program or whether it's a walk in the park. All of that is movement, and all of that encourage us to move a little bit more each day. Then the other piece is resources and opportunities. So we acknowledge that in order to support that physical activity, having things around you, having the right resources to be able to get out for a walk. That might be good weather in the spring, summer now coming up, and having opportunities to share in movement with other people, or access to a facility where you might be able to move together with people is really, really important. And then lastly, this is one we're going to dig in a little bit more on, is motivation and support. So how do you build your motivation? And when it comes to support, we always talk about social support, because we know how important it is to at least share your physical activity plans and your aspirations with other people that can help you be accountable, but that can also support you in those things. So when people know what your plans are, when people know what you're trying to achieve, people around you can be really supportive and help you keep you going in maybe difficult times, or help you stay accountable, talk about different things, talk about challenges, and work, maybe even be that exercise partner for you. And building the motivation is another piece that we want to think about. And one of the areas that you've probably all heard about is the idea of goal setting, and thinking about, first and foremost, what motivates you to move more. So what is my reason for being here at this webinar today? What is my reason for wanting to think about movement and maybe move a little bit more? It's important to actually write those things down and really think about them and dwell on them a little bit, because those underlying factors are things that are going to keep you going. When maybe you have a challenging week, you're going to come back to those motivating factors and think about, what are you doing here? What is your reason for wanting to move today or this week? And then with those motivations, it's important to set some sort of plan or roadmap of different goals. And we're going to talk about SMART goals briefly in just a second, but starting to think about different goals. What do you want to achieve? What are those steps that are going to allow you to get there? And with any goal, it needs to be both challenging, but also realistic. So we don't want the goal to be super easy, because then we just achieve it right away and we're stuck back to square one. But we also want it to be realistic, so that we can feel like we're making progress towards that goal, and step by step. And we want to set goals that we have some level of control about. Whether those are things that are out of our control, sometimes we want to get out for a walk every single day, and we have a day where it's just freezing cold weather or minus 40 with the wind chill or something like that. Sometimes that's out of our control. So when we set goals, we want to think about making sure that those are aligned with the factors that we can control. And then ultimately, back to this enjoyment, we want to be able to enjoy the process, evaluate your goals over time and your plans, think about how far you've come, what progress you've made, and also celebrate. So never feel bad to take a moment, take a day to celebrate and see how far you've come on this movement journey. So this is what SMART goals are all about. I'm just going to go through it briefly, because maybe you've heard about it already, or maybe you can take a time to go back to it later today or during this week. So goals that are SMART are specific. That means you're really specifying, being clear about what you want to achieve. They're measurable. So this is something that you're actually going to be able to assess over time, whether you've been successful or whether you've made progress towards this goal. They're attainable. So that's that balance between being challenging and realistic. They're relevant and realistic. So relevant, I think, is also important, because a goal that's completely irrelevant to you, if someone sets a goal for you to lose 10 pounds and that's not something that is important or relevant to you, that's not going to be a goal you're going to work really hard towards. So goals have to be your own, and they have to be relevant to you. And then timely and together. So timely just means you have a clear time frame on when you're going to reevaluate this goal, when you want to achieve it by. And together gets back to that idea of social support. So you've shared your goal with other people. Maybe you're working on something with a friend of yours that wants to achieve that goal as well. And that's going to help with the whole idea of goal setting. So I want you to go back to this a little bit after the workshop and think about setting a SMART movement goal for yourself. So when you think about these goals, think about, what does that goal mean to you? Why is it important? What is the benefit of making this change? And ultimately, what does success look like? And with this piece of success, I encourage you to think about progress and stepwise success, rather than just thinking either I'm successful or not successful, because that black and white thinking tends to trap us in this idea that if we even make tons of progress towards a goal, but fall just short, let's say we have a 10,000 step count goal for the day and we do 9,000 steps, we feel really guilty, we feel bad, but we've done amazing. We've done 9,000 steps that day. So when it comes to success, think about stepwise success and what that might look like. So I encourage you to go back to this. And like I said, the handouts we'll send around afterwards will have these questions and encourage you to write these down, take it down, and then maybe talk with someone else about a smart movement goal that you have. So the second piece of this idea of how to move more is that the fact that seeing yourself as a mover, as an exerciser, seeing your identity embedded in this idea that I can move and I want to move is a key part about sticking to that behavior change. So we talk about it as viewing movement as a lifestyle. So here you can see on this diagram on the right that these are some of the key steps and ways to work towards physical activity behavior change. So things like finding your motivation and enjoyment, committing to progress, making it social and fun, planning for barriers, so planning for things that might come up and disrupt that exercise, and then celebrating progress and reevaluating, seeing what's working, what's not working. Those are some key steps, and this is an ongoing process over time. But at the center of that is the fact that you see yourself as someone who is a mover, who can move, who wants to move, and who sees the benefits of movement. So viewing yourself as a mover relates to creating your identity as that person, as someone, and we know for behaviors that we do, people tend to act in accordance with how they see themselves as an identity. So if they see themselves, for example, for myself, I see myself as a rock climber. That's one of the key sports that I work towards and train on. And so I tend to act in congruence with that identity. I tend to get out even on a hard day and set up a training routine for myself, make my way to the climbing gym and do that activity. So think about how you might define this for yourself. And being an exerciser, a mover, doesn't have to mean that you're a marathon runner or that you are a rock climber like myself. This can be as simple as just someone who values the fact of having daily movement as part of your active living. So not necessarily to achieve an outcome. And when you think about this, here I like to think of this layered diagram here with the fact that outcomes are on the outside of this layered diagram, and at the very center you can see is that identity. So everything that you do, everything that happens, the process, the outcomes are a result of how you see yourself and building that identity. So as you start to get moving, as you start to think about some of those goals, think about as well, how do you define yourself? Do you see yourself as a mover? And with that, we're just going to start the first gears in this process right now. In this activity. So this is all about thinking of yourself as I am a mover, I can move, I can do this. And so I want you to think about two questions here. The first is, how do you incorporate movement into your daily life? So right now, what are things that maybe you already do to incorporate movement? And then the second question as a follow-up, what can you do to move more in daily life? So with that, I'm going to turn my attention to the chat as you think about these two questions. And if you feel comfortable doing so, I encourage you to share in the chat, and you can use any format, but here's some formats just thinking about I am a mover and I'm committed to moving more, and maybe share about why and how you plan to do those things. So I'm just going to do about 2 minutes here, just really quickly, let you share your ideas on this and encourage you to continue typing in the chat even as I move on here. But how do you incorporate movement into your daily life? What can you do to move more in daily life? Awesome. We have one here. Jocelyn says, I am a mover because I have a family house to maintain. I hardly ever sit. And she says, I also try to go for a daily walk. Awesome, Jocelyn. You are definitely a mover, and that is awesome. Dorothy, she says she's a mover because she loves gardening and her house plants. So she has that daily check-in and that movement. And Stephanie says her dog is a big motivator. She's a mover because she loves to go for walks with her dog. That's awesome. That's a great social support tool there, your dog. Awesome. And we've got a couple more rolling in here. I'll continue to let those come through, but I'll move on here in the interest of time. So we have another one that said they feel the benefits, seen and feel the benefits of movement in survivorship. Walking equals pain relief. Great. Awesome. So I'll move on here to just a quick summary of what we've talked about. So what we talked about in the second portion around behavior change is the fact that there are some key initial steps that you can take to start moving more. And that comes around thinking about movement, thinking about who your supports might be, thinking about what plans and goals do you have, and taking those initial steps to then come to that identity and think back to that of, I am a mover. What makes me a mover, and what can I do to move a little bit more in daily life? So with that, I'm going to move it on to Julianna, who's going to talk a little bit about Excel and some of the great movement resources that we have available to you and everyone who is going through a cancer diagnosis and living with and beyond cancer.
Awesome. Thanks, Manny. Okay, so I will talk about Excel. So Excel is Exercise for Cancer to Enhance Living Well. And we are funded by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, the Canadian Cancer Society, as well as the Alberta Cancer Foundation. Manny, next slide. All right, so Excel offers a free exercise oncology program to those living in rural and underserved areas across the country who are living with and beyond cancer. So this is for any cancer type. So we have people who have breast cancer, prostate cancer, any of the tumor groups are welcome to join our classes. And our definition of underserved has evolved throughout the pandemic. So our study actually started at the beginning of the pandemic, and we recognized that our original outreach to just those living in rural and remote areas had to be changed and shifted a little bit because people living in cities didn't even have access to exercise oncology programs. So right now, because programs are starting to become more available as things are opening up again, it is more of a case-by-case situation. So we look at what's available in a city, if that's where you're coming from. And if Excel isn't quite the right option for you, we will make sure that you're connected with a program in your community if you're living in a city. So our programs are free, they're 12 weeks, and they are tailored to you. So even though they're group-based, we ensure that no matter your situation, no matter your experience, we always make sure that the program is tailored and modified based on your needs. And to do that, we have our programs led by exercise oncology trained instructors. So we make sure that beyond just the normal training that they get to be able to teach classes, we provide additional training so that they know what treatments you've been through, what side effects you might be experiencing. If you're in the midst of treatment, what you might be expecting down the road in terms of side effects, and then how to modify the program based on what you're feeling, and knowing that you might change, like how you're feeling might change day to day. So knowing to expect that maybe you're coming into class quite fatigued after a certain treatment, and we're just happy that you show up, and we can modify. If you just need to sit in the chair, we can modify for you. Right now, most of our classes are delivered online through Zoom. We do have some in-person classes in the Maritimes that are running quite successfully, and we hope to continue expanding our in-person programs, but that's just based on demand. So with the online delivery, we make sure that not only do we have an instructor, we also have a moderator who's watching the class at all times for safety. So the instructor can, it's like if you were in a studio setting. So the instructor is at the front of the class. She's walking you through, she or he is walking you through the program. And then we have a moderator who's just watching the screen at all times, making sure that you're safe and helping give you some cues to lead you through the exercises. So if you're interested, what you can do is contact us by email at wellnesslab@ucalgary.ca. And so these slides, as Manny said, they'll be provided to you, so you don't need to scramble to write down the email address. We'll have our contact information made available to you. Next slide, please. So as I said, the programs are free. They're 12 weeks long and they are group-based. So the classes run twice a week and they're 60 minutes long. The exercises that we do combine a few different modes. So we make sure that we involve cardiovascular exercise, resistance training, we work on balance as well as flexibility. As I said, we use the Zoom platform. We have our moderator in addition to the instructor for safety, and we gather information about your location just in case we needed to send emergency services your way. We have an emergency contact available at all times. So the most important thing is making sure that everyone feels safe in our classes. Next slide, Manny. So in addition to the exercise, we also provide education. So some of the things that Manny reviewed, we actually go through in our classes. In addition to that, we also offer education workshops. So these are just additional. You don't need to attend them as part of the program, but they're just a bonus to give everyone an opportunity to learn a little bit more about these different topics. But then we spend a lot of time in breakout rooms. So you can spend time with your classmates discussing things like, well, what are your goals? And you can set goals together, or maybe talk about your cancer-related fatigue or certain side effects that you have. So we know that with the in-person programs that used to be run before COVID, it was so easy to develop community. Conversations and connections with classmates just happened automatically, and that's harder to replicate in an online setting. So these workshops and webinars are an opportunity for participants to come together, share their experiences. And this is just a quote that kind of shows exactly how someone feels about that. It just gives them an opportunity to spend time with others who are going through the same thing and focus on themselves. Next slide, Manny. So to date, we have had over 600 participants since the fall of 2020 in this study. And we are going into our third year out of 5 years of funding. So we're doing really well. And it's great to be reaching so many people with this program. And we have participants from coast to coast, so from all over the country. We've even had a couple from the territories. We're hoping to get more involved from Northwest Territories, which is really exciting. And we've had really great feedback from people. So although we would like to have more in-person programs running, having online classes, people love to be able to work with others who are from across the country. And so hopefully we will be able to get those in-person programs running, but we'll always have some programs online. And next slide. And so here are just a couple examples from participants who have gone through the program. Manny and I can talk about how we think it's a great program and it's a wonderful study, but it really, the participants' voice is so important and speak to their experience and how they felt it's impacted them. And of course, when we think about an exercise program, you think, well, I'm going to improve physically, and you might improve your function. But it's more than just the physical aspect. We see improvements in energy. There can be changes to quality of life. It can impact mental health. So Excel isn't just about providing exercise. We do want to improve quality of life. Next slide. So here are a couple common questions that we have. So people might be concerned about not having had any exercise experience. So that's completely fine. There's people who have just been doing walking before, they haven't done any exercise classes, to people who are very experienced with exercise. We have such a range of different abilities, and our instructors are amazing at being able to tailor to each person's needs and each person's experiences. People wonder about the equipment they might need. So I still don't have weights when I teach my classes. I still use soup cans. So we work with what you've got. We encourage you to be creative, and you don't need to spend a lot to be able to join these classes. If you are on treatment, or you have a certain chronic condition, you're still very welcome to join. So again, we expect that people day to day might have different energy levels. They might not be feeling great certain days. So again, if you can just show up to class, we will modify the program based on how you're feeling. And then for those, I just have one more. Sometimes people do worry. So we do have one of our circuits we do on the floor, but there's a lot of people who can't get on and off the floor. So again, we can modify, and we just do chair-based or standing-based options for you. So regardless of previous experience, your fitness levels, or the equipment that you have, will meet you where you're at. And then the last page we have is just our other resources. So we have a YouTube channel, and we can share this link as well, where we've pre-recorded an 8-week program that takes you through an hour-long class for 8 weeks. So that's free and available to anyone who's interested, and you can just use if you'd like. So we can share that link. We also have the Thriving with Exercise, the Thriver manual. So this is an amazing resource. It's a 90-page manual with information on how to engage in activity for those living with and beyond cancer. It has some tips on diet as well. So there's tons of resources in that manual, and that's free as well. And then we also, Wellspring has a few different programs across the country. They have exercise oncology programs, but they also have other classes. So there's art classes they offer, financial planning, and all of their programs are free as well. And so with that, like I said, we can provide you with all of our links and emails. So if you are interested in joining the program, you can get in touch with us. But now I will hand it off to Sarah, because like I said, Manny and I can sing Excel's praises, but it really comes down to participants' experiences. So Sarah, if you wanted to take it away.
Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Manny. Yes, I joined the Excel program in April 2021. I am not a gym person. I was never been a gym person. I like outdoor activities, but not in the gym, because in my mind, I thought I had to wear special clothing, I have to have some equipment, but no, with this program, Excel program, all you have to do is just the desire to do something at the beginning, but then you will notice the improvement in your body. For example, me, an example, I don't have that flap in my arm, so I am proud of that. I feel stronger, happier, with more energy, which is a problem for us. When I joined this program, I was going through chemotherapy at that moment. So there were some days that I told my instructor, I will be a little slow today. But no, at the end, I was faster and stronger and happier. So it is worth to try, at least try. The feeling that I have being a part of this program is I belong to a group. I belong to a community which faces pretty much the same problems that I have. So those workshops that Manny has mentioned, they were very, very helpful for us cancer patients to see other people and to feel encouragement from them, from those meetings, from those tips. Keep moving, walk. And now I have this reminder. So every hour, if I don't walk, the reminder is move, walk, stand up. So yes, it's very, very encouraging. Now changes in my behavior. Now you have seen my helper. Yes, my behavior has changed. I am more active. Even if it's snowing outside, I have the commitment to walk a little bit outside every day. At least every day, at least 30 minutes, at least. Now, the program, online program, that is a great opportunity to have fun. Just to have fun, move, enjoy good music. The instructors are amazing. They are very understanding, compassionate, and very knowledgeable. If I cannot make one exercise, they modified it to do something similar. And I feel, oh, yes, I can do this. And yes, the whole team is amazing. It's an amazing team. Then the advantages of taking the program online is that you are at home. You don't need any specific equipment. You can be in your pajamas if you want, and you can do it. You can do it. You also have all those free information, free online, the exercise that you can do it. So yes, I have those PDF documents still. So whenever I forgot to improve my the exercises, I can see them. Oh yes, I need to do the I, Y, T. That's my favorite one. Yes. Something else. This program taught me to keep moving. Now I have this helper that reminds me every hour to move, to keep moving. So I encourage everyone, not only ovarian cancer. Yes, I have breast and ovarian cancer. And any kind of cancer, you can enroll in this program. You can enjoy the benefits of the exercise. You can make new friends. Again, the instructors are awesome. And even though I was diagnosed with this cancer in 2012, 10 years, this January was a big celebration for me. So if I can do it, you can do it. I think that's the whole message. Keep moving, and you can do it.
Thank you, Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. And congratulations on 10 years. That is a huge celebration. So we do have time for a couple of questions. And I know that I have two here. So first question is, I have COPD and have been extremely inactive since my diagnosis. Anxiety has played a big part in this. Any suggestions you could give me to start exercising slowly would be appreciated.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of people that come into the program who have other chronic conditions. And whether you're joining Excel or you're just trying to exercise on your own, it's, as Manny said, just starting slow. And we know that even 5 or 10-minute bouts of exercise add up. So you don't need to start off with 30 minutes of exercise. It can just be 5 minutes of walking, doing laps around your house, and just monitoring how hard that feels. So for someone with COPD, so that's impacting lungs, you would want to make sure that you're working from 0 to 10 effort. You would want to make sure you're working at a 2 or a 3 maybe, and same with breathlessness, looking at a 2 to 4 breathlessness, and just monitor how you're feeling.
Thanks, Juliana. Okay, another question here is, understanding that everyone's healing and recovery is as individual as we all are, is there a guideline as to what we can slowly add to our daily routines and what we should avoid or do closer to when we have reached some milestones in terms of exercise and movement?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think such an important point to emphasize. We try to do it throughout our webinar, but no individual is different. That's why they're called individuals, and that's why each person has a different history, a different type of diagnosis, everything else around that. it all factors in. And that's why in all of our programs, we individualize, we try to find, meet that person where they're at and things that they can do comfortably. So with that, there's not going to be a specific guideline for where exactly you are and what exactly you're going through, but there's always this general guideline that you can follow in the fact that take some steps, progress slowly, start slow and progress slowly. But ultimately, you can always check back in with yourself. So if you're doing something, moving, and you realize that afterwards you feel super, super tired, and that's something that persists for a long time, or your muscles feel like you can't do any movement for the next days, you take that feedback for yourself. You listen to your body and you come back and think about, maybe that was a little bit too much that I was doing. And then on the other hand, you can take that positive feedback. If you're moving, if you do a 15-minute walk and afterwards for the next hour, the next day, you feel awesome, you really feel energized, and you realize, yes, I can do this. That's that positive feedback to then think about, this is great, this is a good stepping stone. Maybe I can do more, or maybe I stay at that point. But it's all about that slow, gradual progression. And as the person who asked this question said, it's very individualized. So you need to listen to your body, you need to acknowledge that feedback, reflect, and then come back to it and take it step by step.
And I think one thing to note, particularly for those who have gone through surgery, follow your surgeon's guidelines. So for anyone who has gone through surgery, usually it's at least 6 weeks before you should be engaging in like an exercise program or something like that. So always follow surgeon's guidelines or your healthcare provider's guidelines on what you should be engaging in exercise-wise.
Thank you. We had one other question, but it was about equipment, and I think we've answered that. I think Sarah answered it, and both of you did as well. So no equipment necessary, and the program can be totally tailored to what you have at home. So I just wanted to say too, thank you for this great presentation. I am passionate about physical fitness and including that in my life, not only because I feel better physically, but for me, it's a huge mental aspect for me, and I feel so much better mentally when I'm able to, for me, it's the fresh air to get outside and to move a little bit outside. So again, I just wanted to thank you, Julianna and Manny and Sarah, for sharing your time with us today, your experiences and your expertise with us. It's been a great hour. We've all learned a lot and hopefully can take those steps. Like you said, all of the steps add up. I also just wanted to let everybody know about the remaining 3 sessions that we do have in our Spring Lunch and Learn series. We have next Tuesday, May the 17th, and that session is improving your bowel habits through diet. We will have Robin Chambers, who's an oncology dietitian from Cancer Care Manitoba, speaking at that session. On May the 24th, we have a session on complementary therapies, and Dr. Linda Belneves in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Manitoba will be presenting that session for us. And we also have our final session on May the 31st is on pelvic radiation-induced bladder and GI side effects. And we have Dr. Kaku Manu, who is a radiation oncologist with Cancer Care Manitoba, who will be presenting that session. So finally, again, thank you all for joining us today, but your feedback is extremely valued and really important for us in helping to make decisions on topics for future sessions. So if you could take a few minutes, I know Michelle has posted the link for the survey in the chat on the right-hand side. If you can take a couple of minutes to fill that out. You also will receive an email from us tomorrow that includes that link as well. So if you don't have time right now, if you could take some time maybe tomorrow to fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it. So on behalf of all of us here at Ovarian Cancer Canada and Cancer Care Manitoba, we want to thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your day and keep moving.